1. Welcome to episode number 7 of the CoinSec Podcast. The CoinSec Podcast is a podcast about cryptocurrency and blockchain technologies with a focus on securing them. Don't let the hum of our Bitcoin miners in the background disrupt your listening pleasure. Today with me, you've got Steve Borosh. What's up, Steve?
Hey, doing great.
Doing great.
Actually, I'm having to travel to London here coming pretty soon, so hopefully I'll get to go see like Electroneum's headquarters or something like that. See if I can get in on the know.
Nice.
Not that way.
What's up, Mike? That sounded like Mike Felch, who's also with us.
What's going on?
How you doing, man?
What's going on? I'm here.
You don't sound like that crazy deep voice that I heard a little bit ago that sounded terrifying.
Dude. Yeah.
Mike problems.
Ralph May is also with us. What's up, Ralph?
Hey, what is going on, guys?
We apologize. We apologize for there being like a week in between. We had some things going on. I don't know. It just that things happen.
Yeah,
Life happens.
Yeah, we took a cruise. Went on a European vacation. It was crazy, guys. It was crazy.
But we are back. A week later. It wasn't like we took like a huge, like expansive vacation, but we are here nevertheless to talk about cryptocurrency. And this week we've got a pretty great show for you. We've got a whole bunch of awesome news to talk about from actually the last couple weeks, which is makes for like a nice newsy episode. As well as we're going to talk a little bit about Kraken Bitcoin wallets, which should be a fun topic all around. So before we jump into the news for the week, let's go ahead and talk about where the market's at, because it's been 2 weeks. We are at March. Guys, we are in March right now.
Nothing's happened.
You shouldn't say that. In all honesty, the market cap is basically where it was 2 years, or not 2 years
2
ago.
weeks ago.
God, 2 years ago. 2 weeks ago. But Bitcoin is at over 11,000 again. It's kind of interesting. I mean, it's actually very exciting. But so the thing that's interesting there is that the market cap's at $463 billion. Bitcoin's at $11,000. The rest of all the altcoins are kind of slowly
dragging along.
It's kind of brutal. So what's going on there?
Yeah, mining's been a little tough lately. Profits kind of, like you said, stagnant. So I'm not 100% sure why things aren't picking up. There's a lot of good news coming out. Coins are coming onto new exchanges and stuff, and there's movement in the industry. It's just seems like it's a ho-hum time, and things are just kind of going left to right on the market scales.
All right, you guys can call me a pessimist here, but I want this stuff to go down more because these damn graphics cards are too freaking expensive, man. I can't buy one. It's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous.
Yeah,
they are going down, just not as slowly as you would hope.
So Nvidia and AMD both have came out and saying they're going to take a huge hit if miners aren't buying cards.
What?
Yeah, I mean that's the majority of their market now. That's the majority of their market now. I mean, gamers are not their target market anymore. It's freaking coin miners.
I'm just waiting for the day where people are just offloading them left and right on eBay, and I'm just like, cards are plenty. But I'm sure at that point it'll be like, yeah.
Well, so the thing I think is interesting here is a lot of times I have conversations with people who are like, so where's cryptocurrency actually going to go in the future? Is Bitcoin really going to be the primary transactional coin that's out there? And the majority of the time I say no, I don't think that it is, because of a couple things. I say high transaction value or high transaction fees, long transaction times, because it can take 30 minutes if you pay a high transaction fee to get a coin across. So the majority of the time I say hey, it's going to be the gold standard, whereas people know the name of Bitcoin pretty well, that they're going to store value in Bitcoin. So I see Bitcoin long term still being valuable. I don't see it being the highest transaction coin, but it's still going to be there. But what's interesting to see is how much Bitcoin is growing right now, and all these other coins are kind of dying off, even with that kind of in the back of everyone's mind. Like Bitcoin is not the best coin for transacting between peer-to-peer.
No, and I think I've seen, I don't know if we have it in the schedule for this week. I don't think so, but Overstock is starting to take Raven coin, which their CEO compared it to Bitcoin, but faster. I don't know.
Interesting. I have never heard of it.
And pretty much an unheard. I mined it a little bit last week, but it's not really on too many places out there. So I think that news will kind of drive that up. But I don't know. It's good to see big places like that taking other cryptocurrencies. And I think hopefully it'll help push other places to start accepting them as well.
If I was coming out with a coin, it would be Bitcoin, but better.
I think that's kind of what everybody says, right?
Yeah, I mean,
right.
We'll talk about Bitcoin private later, which is, of course, kind of trying to say the same thing. Just like Bitcoin Cash said, just like Bitcoin Gold said. But Bitcoin private actually, to me, looks a little bit interesting, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. So Bitcoin's at 11,000, Ethereum's at 875, which is actually really interesting to me because for the longest time, Bitcoin and Ethereum have had that kind of 10-to-1 relationship. And right now, they're not at that 10-to-1 relationship. I mean, it's a little off. I mean, 11,000 to 875 is off from that 10-to-1 relationship. Normally, like if you saw 11,000 for Bitcoin, you'd see 110 or $1,100 for Ethereum.
So you're saying now's the time to buy?
Now's the time to buy Ethereum for sure. I mean, of course, I'm not a financial advisor, and don't sue me because
Got it. Bo said buy it. Let's all buy it, guys.
I think it's really interesting to see how all the altcoins are so low right now. It's amazing to me. We usually see the altcoins kind of rise at the same time Bitcoin's rising, but right now Bitcoin's just kind of taken off on its own, which is kind of interesting.
We need to see what other signals are doing the same thing.
Yeah,
because it'd be really cool to roll out some neural network predictions based on currency values and see what signals we can calculate.
Right.
And lastly, so, one of the things we always do, or at least I do. I don't know if these other guys agree with me, but I've been kind of including just the top 3 coins and the value discussion. And Ripple for the last, few months has been in the top 3. So I've always included Ripple, and I don't want anyone to think that's like a listener that we just like approve of Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Ripple, because there's a lot of other coins out there that are interesting. It's just like, I think these are the top 3 that are on in terms of coin market cap, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like your stock market top X, I guess you would compare it to, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so these kind of set the tone for the market pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if Bitcoin Cash jumped into number 3, I probably wouldn't talk about them. But anyone else, I'd be okay with talking about.
Plus, if we talked about all the coins, we'd just be talking about those the whole episode. It would take us the whole episode to list them all.
Exactly. And hey, you know what?
I'm going through these, and it's just you can't even keep up anymore.
Yeah, there's some other great podcasts that talk about just the coins, and like they talk about ICOs, they talk about trading, they talk about different just economic stimulus and the cryptocurrency ecosystem. But what we really wanted to focus on was more on the security side, which I think, definitely like what we've been doing, touching on the values is important. Because it shows where interest is, and I think that's a big part of what is driving the insecurity in the cryptocurrency spectrum, because there's a lot of companies that see these values and they're like, hey, I see Bitcoin at $11,000, or hey, back in December I see Bitcoin at $19,000. I better jump on that cryptocurrency bandwagon and get blockchain implemented into my company, in whatever way I can.
The more the price goes up, the more blood's in the water, and the more sharks are going to come out too. So, and we keep seeing more of that as well. So,
yeah. We haven't actually talked a whole lot about like what we do for a living. speaking from like the type of job that the four of us have, right? Like the four of us, we pen test companies. We try to hack companies for a living. And like I actually had a client this week that they said that their company was actually trying to push towards implementing blockchain into what they do. And like they didn't really have like a real idea about like what that meant. And I go back to like kind of like the best description I've ever heard of like whether or not you should implement blockchain in your company or not. And it's like, hey, if you can do what the problem is that you're trying to solve with a database, you don't need blockchain. If you can do it with, really blockchain's about like having that decentralized ledger that's publicly available that you cannot edit. And
so what you're saying is I need to create a technology that doesn't require a database that needs to be able to scale, so I could use blockchain in my tool.
Yes, that's what he said. That is what he said.
Yes,
got it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a unique use case, right? I mean, I don't know too many industries that really could be taking advantage of what blockchains are trying to accomplish in a secure fashion. You know what I mean? Like jumping right into it.
I mean, so you don't think that we could build a website with blockchain?
I don't know if you would need to. I mean, I'm sure you could do it. I mean, I don't see there being like an issue with actually making something. I mean, you could probably do like a D app, right? That has some sort of like web interface, but do you really
every time you go to it, you got to pay gas just to load the page.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
but hey, there's a record of every time you ever visited it.
Yeah, perfect.
So I think we need to establish a few conversation points real quick. You know the whole Vim versus Emacs war and the whole tabs versus spaces.
Yes.
I think we need to have one that's
Nano.
DApp versus DApp. Because I call them DApps and you guys are saying DApps, and DApps just sounds so much cooler.
Call them DApps. Yeah.
DApps.
I do think dApps sound cooler, but when I read it, I was like, DApps, okay, decentralized application.
That's really not a Vim versus like Vi kind of thing, though. It's more of like a GIF versus GIF kind of thing. Yeah,
I agree with that, and it's totally GIF, not GIF, because that sounds like peanut butter. We're not looking at peanut butter. Conversation over. Continue.
Well, I don't know. Like, I guess, like, the thing that I think that we as security professionals need to kind of bring to the table is, do you, as a company, really need to be looking at blockchain, or just, looking at a database to store whatever you're trying to do? So what is the criteria? Like, what do you guys think is the criteria for use of blockchain in a corporate environment?
If they're coming to me for consulting, they always need blockchain.
We're building this credit card application. How should we build it? DApp it. DApp all of it.
Yo, give me some DApp. No, we should create a blockchain that can do like a blockchain puppy mill thing.
So basically, it just copies like the DAO code and just re-implements it.
Yeah, absolutely.
What about like an eBay for dogs, but like a DApp? Like you could sell your used dog. I mean,
no, seriously though, should there be like a checklist of things, like, hey, what are you actually trying to solve? Do you need to store stuff, right? Like, is there a storage element necessary? If yes, then. Yeah. Can you store that in a database? If you can, then is it okay to modify that database? Like kind of like a flow chart of questions that say like, if you need to modify it, then no, don't use a blockchain because you can't fucking modify it.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean you're absolutely right. One of the big issues too is the storage of like lots of data. As soon as you start getting, and when I say the word lots is not really as big as you might imagine when it comes to like blockchain. But I mean, once you get into a couple terabytes, I mean, that could be extremely cost prohibitive to use in like a blockchain style build.
Right. And you talk about what if these companies have to go with some kind of compliance. There really is no compliance model for this stuff. So if you start throwing like hard holder data on a blockchain, or I think you're getting into unknown territory as far as securing a lot of this stuff and what it's useful for and what you should be using it for.
Just base 64 and code it before you put it on there. I think you're fine.
That is absolutely true. Write that down.
No, but realistically, I think if the application needs to be decentralized, or if you need some sort of integrity to show chain of custody, for instance, would be really cool for like forensics.
Forensically, yeah.
Yeah, because when you're doing a forensic investigation, chain of custody is super important to be able to reproduce the steps, or actually guarantee certain steps took place. So as long as you're not actually storing the data on there, but you're just storing kind of a synopsis of the timeline of that custody, that'd be really cool. I've seen some stuff where they were doing, I forget, I mean, we might have already talked about it too, but I don't remember, but with like educational diplomas, so being able to determine whether or not somebody has a certain degree or a certain certification, they kind of get posted out there, and so you can kind of validate credentials from that perspective. Those types of applications I think are super critical, not because they couldn't be stored into a database, but because the transparency is there that kind of protects the integrity of what they're claiming. So
and it makes it easier to go validate too, like as opposed to like having to like, oh, you know what, you need transcriptions or from your college or whatever, like you need to have like the records or whatever from your previous school to actually show that you actually graduated these courses with these certain honors or whatever, right? Just have it all on a blockchain. I mean,
so like that, those types of applications I think are really good for blockchain, not necessarily because they have to have them, but because it brings integrity into the forefront. And so you have stuff like, I know we joke about the bananas and the banana blockchain stuff, but realistically, if you're creating some sort of produce and you're guaranteeing certain manufacturing processes or that don't include GMOs or something along that nature, a blockchain would be really good for that, because now you're able to show, step by step a process that you're communicating to your customer base as existing, and it's verifiable. So while I don't think it's not that it couldn't be in a database, but it tends to speak better when people have a transparent view into whatever you're claiming.
Mm-hmm. The problem is like you have like still a human element, right? Like, so whoever's saying that, whatever organic thing happened is still a human person that's like punching a code into like a computer somewhere saying, yes, this happened. But really, like on the backside, they're like dumping bananas off the side of a truck and picking them up and like, I don't know, or growing them like in a factory or some shit.
Right.
It's underwater bananas. That's all I'm thinking of, like hydroponic. Totally non-GMO, dude. Sorry. Left field.
Yeah. All right. Well, anyways, yeah. I guess, I don't know, in the end, just if you're a company that's trying to implement, I don't know, the latest thing into your organization, which right now blockchain's the hype, just think about it really hard before you go and do it. And if you do decide to do it, make sure that you understand the security implications, if I can say the word right. All right, so you guys,
it'd be nice. I just want to interject real quick. It'd be nice if there was some kind of standard in the security industry, if we could move towards that, to certify companies
for blockchain
regulation.
Yeah,
we want more regulation.
I don't necessarily think.
No, but I mean, there's got to be some way to come up with some kind of testing standards, right?
Yeah, just like any other security framework, right? Like PCI, HIPAA, all that stuff.
Right. Yeah, I just think that would be cool to see on our side. If anybody out there's listening that is thinking about doing that, it'd be cool to see.
All right, let's go ahead and move on into our weekly coin security news. So we've got a few stories this week. The first one is a story about an Ethereum honeypot. So I like honeypots. I think it's a great idea just in general. I know as a pen tester, on any assessment that I go on, if I ever get caught because I've like logged into a honeypot on accident, I'm always like, dude, that's awesome. It just makes me feel so good knowing that somebody else is trying to like detect me, based off of like creating vulnerable systems. So in this case, let's take a look. So basically this was an Ethereum based honeypot that essentially allowed hackers to steal from other hackers. So a user of Reddit was actually hunting for examples of contracts that exhibited possible susceptibility to the reentrancy attack, which that was the DAO problem. And basically what would happen is these security researchers, or quote unquote hackers, would go and try to exploit these, and they would send ether into the account, hoping to basically siphon other ether from it, but the ether would get stuck there. And finally, like they discovered that they would send ether in, but it would never come back, and the person who owned the actual contract was just like siphoning it off. So basically they were hacking ether from ether, or from ether hackers. That makes sense.
Yes.
I read the post on this on the Bitcoin forum, and it was pretty crazy, the whole attack and how it was set up. But yeah, in general, these guys were trying to cheat the system, and they were just giving away their coins. It's brutal.
It's funny because you could scan the blockchain for reentrancy vulnerabilities, right? So you could scan live contracts that are sitting out there, and when you see live contracts that are sitting out there with funds, it could easily be tempting for somebody to say, oh wow, you know what? Let me just copy this. This is what they did. They copied the contract code to the Ethereum test network, and then verified that they were able to get the funds out, and then said, oh, well, let's just take it to the production network. And so they went to the Ethereum network and then tried to do it. But I guess there was a reversal that was kind of in the code that was kind of hidden and offset that called a fallback function that during the withdrawal, they reversed it and it sent it back to like the original owner or whatever. So super funny. I think we're going to see this a lot more too, especially with the number of vulnerabilities in these contracts that are coming out and people that are doing it. So I wouldn't be surprised that people find these vulnerability classes and then roll their own to lock that in and basically steal.
So when it comes to like legality with something like that, like where do you actually like cut the line? Like where's the line there when it comes to whether or not that's a legal thing for somebody to do? Like, so all right, so if I go deploy a contract to the network that says, hey, you know what, if you submit money to me, it's my money.
Yeah.
And people think that it's vulnerable. They're trying to hack it, right? They're trying to like submit a token to gain tokens, but in reality, I'm kind of tricking them. Like, what's the legality there?
Okay, so I don't have one for the crypto coins, but I got a pretty similar situation that occurred in a real world at a company that I was working for. We were dealing with a spearfisher who was going after accounts receivable, and they were intercepting wire transfers for large purchases. And these spearfishers were basically piggybacking the emails that were going to accounts receivable for the recipient bank account information and saying, hey, disregard that last account number and use this one instead, because the emails were already compromised and they were just sitting kind of waiting for the prime time. So the bureau came in, we had to sit down because obviously we got really large wire transfers and feds are involved, and it's a huge mess. And so literally the CTO asked, if we hacked them back, are we allowed to do something like that? And obviously their response was, no, don't do that. But then I rephrased the question and I said, what if we send fake credentials to another page and they try to use those credentials and I hooked their browser in my web application to be able to fingerprint them and get some more information from their browser. And they said that that was actually legal. So that's what we did. We ended up sending a fake email with some fake digital currency transaction, a way to withdraw, basically log in information and do some wire transfers. And they went to my phishing page and then tried to use the credentials, and I hooked their browser using Beef. And so all of that was legal because that was something that they were purposefully trying to pursue. But we didn't actually hack them back. We really just kind of fingerprinted, obviously, the stuff that Beef fingerprints. But so it's a little bit similar in that, you're actually using something that I have, and you're trying to access something, and it just so happens that you purposefully went to a site in order to kind of do something, but it kind of backfired on you.
That's
it's just kind of, so it just reminded me of that actually, as you asked that question. But I think that in circumstantially with a DApp, where they're sending funds to it in hopes of tricking my application into some sort of functionality that it wasn't designed for, and they get stuck, they just paid to try to use my app. So, sorry.
That's very interesting. And actually, another question I thought about earlier. I know we're going to talk about the potential for collisions later, right? Like wallet collisions, or no?
What about it?
The topic later, generating the collisions on private keys.
Sure. Yeah. So yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have to jump right into it yet, but like the thing I was thinking about earlier was that, so from the perspective of let's say you could, I know I'm totally getting ahead of the schedule here. We can come back to the rest of the news, but I just wanted to jump to this because we're talking about legality issues.
Sure.
So let's say that you could theoretically generate a private key that matched somebody else's private key, right? In any cryptocurrency. It doesn't have to be Bitcoin, it could be anything. Let's say just computationally, you could just brute force a bunch of different private keys, derive one, and then now have control of a wallet, right? Now, is that illegal? I mean, technically, I generated that key, and it just so happened when I generated it, there was a bunch of Bitcoin in it.
Lotto.
I think it's more jurisdictional. And here's the other question that I think would actually arise, because so we could jump ahead to that thing. What we were talking about is basically taking a Bitcoin address and colliding private Bitcoin keys for the creation of those addresses that are out there. So for instance, if an address has some funds on there, and I was able to collide a private key that returns the same address, because they're technically, we're not saying that I am causing a collision on the same exact private key. What we're saying is it's actually causing a collision on a different private key that actually results in the same Bitcoin address.
Right, it's a pre-image. It's just like the Lisk attack that we talked about a few episodes ago.
Right. So it's a little bit different in saying I generated the same key as this guy. It'd be like saying, that's like the equivalent of saying, well, it just so happened to generate the same key to this guy's house, and it just so happened to work on this lock, so therefore I still have access to the house.
So what we're talking about is you'd have to have that same vulnerability Lisk had, where if you didn't have the Bitcoins or any coins bound to the address, then you could control them. But I think in Bitcoin's case, they're bound no matter what.
Well, they're bound, but the problem is given a Bitcoin address that was generated from some random entry or some random data, the private key value is different than another private key value, but they both evaluate to the same Bitcoin address. So that's why I was saying it's not necessarily causing a collision on, it's not saying this key equals this key. It's saying these two different keys actually evaluate to the same Bitcoin address, and that happens. That's actually so the news article that we were talking about is it's a project. It's like an open source crowdfunding initiative. That's what it does. It's called the Large Bitcoin Collider, and it's a pool of people that are expending resources to try and collide Bitcoin addresses that have Bitcoin in the wallet, and they've been very successful at it. The question becomes more of an ethical than a legal in most cases, but I think it's going to be based on jurisdiction. Because if I just so happen to generate a different private key that happens to evaluate to the same Bitcoin address as you, and you have funds in your account, well, just because you have controllable funds in your account doesn't necessarily mean that I should have the ability to use that. It really boils down to, well, whose funds are they? Just because they can be both accessed doesn't necessarily mean that they're both attributable to two different people. And so if you did some sort of service and got paid in Bitcoin, that funding is your payment for some sort of service that was rendered. Just because I'm able to generate a private key that can spend that same wallet coin doesn't necessarily mean that I have the legal right to do such a thing.
Right.
And so I think that's where the legality derives, but I also think that it's going to be jurisdictional because different countries are going to have different rules kind of surrounding this. It's really an interesting project, though.
I have a question. If you if you collide two keys, right? Let's say that you're obviously colliding you have two different keys, but they're resolving to the same public address. If you were to make another address, are they in lockstep with each other, or are they going to be unique?
They would be. What do you mean? So the private keys would be unique, but the address would be.
Well, the address is going to. Yeah, the address would be the same. But let's say that I made another transaction, okay, or I received more, bitcoins to a wallet, right? Would you be able to, with that same key, access that same information? Would you be able to get more? I mean, so it's pretty much once you've cracked that one, or we want to say cracked, once you've collided that one private key, every amount of Bitcoin that goes that would match up to that address, you're going to be able to access.
Yeah, because it's going to be absolutely, because I'm going to be able to use that private key to make transactions on that wallet address, and whether that wallet address receives funds in the future, because I have the private key, I could always prove that I could spend coins out of that wallet because I have the private keys that could guarantee that transaction. So that's kind of the idea, is that's what they're doing. And so they have a really unique kind of pool technology, which I wouldn't trust for lots of reasons, but one of the reasons is because they're allowed to execute like remote code on your computer in order to validate that you're actually doing stuff. Sorry, just if you're colliding keys and stealing Bitcoin, you're probably not going to run code on my computer. Sorry, but with that being said, you have this distributed computing that are not only distributing the work amongst the pool, they're only doing it. They're only trying to collide wallets that actually have Bitcoin in it. Yeah. And so they have a whole trophy page. It's like what?
It's like SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. It's like your screensaver now. Like you pop up the screensaver. You leave your computer for a little bit. Screensaver pops up and starts looking for private keys instead of aliens and shit.
Perfect. Well, I guess. And you're right. They do have the trophy page, and they've actually gotten. I was looking on here. I was like, oh man, they've gotten at least a couple Bitcoin out of here.
And what they've done is they've actually taken it, transferred it, and then they've split it up amongst whoever put in the effort in order to actually collide. They've divvied it up. So I don't know. It just seems totally wrong all the way around. But it's a really interesting problem.
My question is that can we, or is there a way to make this more difficult? Like, I thought it was difficult enough, right? But we talked about it not being the same as like a hash collision, right? In certain hashes, I don't think there's ever been examples of collisions, right? But is there a way, is there, a security solution to this, or is this just one of those things where you're just like, well, you never know, this pool might get you. So,
I think the answer is math.
Yeah, it's math.
It is. I mean, if you look, if you look it up, the numbers were crazy big, right? And actually, when he started the article, he was talking about, hey, this is probably a dumb idea because of these numbers. But you also have to realize that we're not talking about every single possibility, only ones that have actually coins. So it kind of gets a lot less. So.
True. So I would imagine this is kind of the problem that a lot of the coins who are trying to solve the quantum resistance problem are trying to solve. So there's a number of coins who are trying to look into the future and understand that computing power obviously is going to escalate exponentially, like it has over the last few years. Like we look at the last 10 years of computing power. Like we've gone from just a standard shitty Pentium processor, to Core i7s, and then now you've got NVIDIA, what is the latest one? It's Titan X or some shit. What was that one, Steve, you sent the other day? It's
Titan V.
Titan V. You got the Titan V now, and then you've also got ASICs for Bitcoin mining. Now look at ASICs for just deriving the freaking private keys. Or
well, I mean, that's just it, though. I mean, if you look at the pools for trophies, I mean, there's a couple half Bitcoins that are gone. I mean, how are you going to be oh, this is a great way to secure my money? If next thing you know, it's just missing the next day.
Exactly.
I mean, I don't know.
That's a good point. One thing that I read earlier this week, actually came out a couple of days ago. Mikko Hyppinen from F-Secure.
Yeah.
Actually, he tweeted, and it was such an awesome tweet. It said, interesting point that was raised in a Reddit thread that he was reading. And this is what it said. Satoshi's original Bitcoins are now a quantum canary. Once we see them moving, we'll know that someone has a functioning advanced quantum computer. Oh. It's just too big of a prize not to be a first thing you do with a quantum computer.
Yeah, it's a million Bitcoins.
Yeah,
seriously.
Now what would really blow your mind is if this freaking pool were to cause a collision.
Right? No, what would really blow your mind is if Craig fucking Wright actually moves that shit.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's
that guy's not. Yeah, he's not Satoshi. No way.
It's not.
He got sued $5 billion this week. Did you see that?
Yeah, because they think because he claimed to be. Why would you claim to have that much money? That's the stupidest thing ever, dude.
Did you see that, guys? Craig Wright got sued $5 billion.
That's a dumb lie. A dumb lie. Hey, what's up, ladies? Yeah, I'm Satoshi. Yeah, you're also broke.
Think about that. What would you do if you got sued $5 billion? That's insane.
Well, he doesn't have it, so it doesn't matter.
I know.
That's being you can sue anybody for as much money as you want, but it doesn't mean you're going to get it.
I mean, they're going to get whatever they can from him. Depending on how much he's worth. I mean, Jesus.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think he's destitute. He's not living on the streets, but yeah, whatever. Yeah, no, it's true. But yeah, no, on the pool stuff, I think it's crazy. That really kind of opened my mind. It's kind of should I store my money in Bitcoin? Maybe I might get collided with. This sucks.
Yeah, so this is exactly what it's talking about. It's a problem about the quantum computing problem, in the future. I mean, we're worried about ASICs and having the majority of the network right now. With Bitcoin, everyone's oh, the 51% attack, if you control 51%, you can screw over Bitcoin. Yeah, but you know what? In probably 20 years time or less, we're going to see quantum computers destroy the same ASICs we have today.
Yeah. I mean, we can fix it. You can make it more difficult. Now, I'm not exactly sure in the quantum world how much more difficult that will end up being, but it's
everything gets rebuilt. Everything that gets broken, if it gets rebuilt, usually comes back a little bit stronger, right? I mean, that's kind of what we do, right? We break systems, we break computers, we break networks, and when they resolve them, hopefully customers all love to resolve their problems that they get identified. But they do come back stronger, and so it's only going to be time before this is broken, and then eventually it'll be solved. It'll be put back together, and then hopefully it'll be stronger. So
yeah, I mean, this is kind of the reason that I see Bitcoin as obviously being the 1.0 of the cryptocurrency realm, right? And 1.0 of anything never survives. 1.0 of the web never survived. It's the 2.0s and 3.0s of anything.
I still have a GeoCities, man. Trust me, it's survived.
No, you don't.
There. No, you're right. I don't. I can't back it up. Come on, man.
Nice try.
All right. It's all right. It's all right.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe I'll get an 805.
But in reality, I mean, most 1.0s don't survive. It's usually like the second gens or third gens that end up actually moving forward and surviving through all the noise.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, I see like some of the newer coins that are coming up kind of being ones that will stay around longer, like Ethereum. Maybe Ripple. I don't know. Ripple will be interesting just because it's centralized. I see Cardano for sure being very interesting in the future. But I don't know. Like, guys, do you have any certain coins that you see as being like ones that are gonna outlive Bitcoin?
Well, I don't think a Bitcoin will go away. I think eventually, way down the road, it'll be more of like just a trading commodity. Something you have, kind of like baseball cards. Because the network, I think down the road, the congestion and all that stuff, it'll ruin it. Whereas the other coins like Ripple and stuff like that and Ethereum, I think, are more suited for other applications, and I think have more backing that will progress further, for sure. What do you guys think? Any specific coins?
I don't know. I still think Ethereum. I think with the dApps, but it could be something else. So we could be like, yeah, I got Ethereum, more stuff, and now it's better. And
right.
But it takes a while for people to really adopt. I mean, like even the dApps are just kind of starting to slowly come around. But that was the whole goal.
He said dApps.
dApps, he did.
It's dApps, whatever, man.
Take a drink.
Yeah.
Every time you say it, you can take a drink.
Every time you say dApps, you have to drink. The drunkest show ever. No, but it will be interesting to see, because it takes a while. Like we're just starting to see kind of like the development. Where tools are getting out, we can really kind of develop these apps quickly. As opposed to starting from scratch. So we'll see.
Cool. All right. So, all right, Mike. What do you got?
I was going to say we should probably go on to the other news.
All right. Mike doesn't have any opinions on coins, so.
Yeah. Nope. He stays neutral.
All right. So let's talk about fake wallets. Steve, I think you threw this in there, so this is all you. I'm just going to throw this 100% on you, Steve.
All right. So there's scam wallets out there. Beware. Next. I mean, no, it just goes into, know what you're downloading. I think this was a fake version of Ether Wallet on the Play Store, and it still had 4.6 star rating, but they were, of course, fake ratings. But it got reported. So mobile's still kind of scary when people can just put fake wallets on mobile, the Play Store and stuff like that. So
that actually brings up an interesting thing. Like, do you think people are actually tracking that shit down? Like, do you think, like, the FBI, like, for example, like, let's say I was a criminal and I want to go stand up like a malicious app today, and I siphon, let's say I siphon like even like a couple Ether, just like, a couple $1,000. Do you think the FBI actually gives a shit about that?
Dude, that's a perfect conf talk. That's what we're going to do.
Do you think they care?
Do you think they care?
No, not thinking you care, but this is how you get into cryptocurrency from a black hat perspective. But not to do it because we really want people to do it. Well, I'm saying, like, so historically you've done talks on like fading to black, right? Yeah. So showing how you can kind of move into a direction. So I was just thinking, what if you took the same approach and said, well, if I was going to be malicious, and I wanted to get in and steal Bitcoins or steal wallets, this is the easy way to do that. Not because we want to teach people to do it, but because we want to teach people how to protect themselves from falling for such a frivolous attack.
Right. I mean, I can see how a lot of people could easily be like, you know what, there's just this latest cryptocurrency that I'm super interested in, and I want to go download the wallet for it. Actually, you know, I can give you a great example. Binance, the exchange, for the longest time didn't have an iPhone app, and they're a huge exchange. You know, like they're massive, and they didn't have an iPhone app. So I could totally see how somebody could totally take advantage of that, just creating like a fake Binance, you know, iPhone app.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
now,
I mean that goes for offline wallets too. For some of these coins that you're not really sure of. I mean, how do you know that the wallet you're downloading doesn't have something in it? Unless, you know, because a lot of this stuff is new. It hasn't been around that long. So there's really not signatures for, I think, those types of vectors. But,
you know, speaking of that, you know, with a really large country that manufactures lots of fake hardware, I'm not going to say that it's China or anything, but I'm surprised that they're not flooding the market with like Trojan hardware wallets.
Maybe they are.
yeah, maybe they are.
That'd be pretty crazy.
I mean, it wouldn't be that hard to do. I mean, right now, I mean, like, so the last time I looked, Ledger, like they were pushed back into like a couple months on their like Nano S wallet.
Yep.
Like it's just been an influx of people trying to buy them because it's not a whole lot of brands out there to buy a hardware wallet, you know. So if you're China or like you said, a major company that can manufacture stuff easily, it wouldn't be that hard to go manufacture something that looks very similar to that and just deploy it.
That phone's home to Shenzhen.
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite books of all time was Threat Vector by Tom Clancy. It was a book about basically a pen testing company, which is actually, I don't know if you guys any of you guys read it?
I have the book in my dresser. Have not read it yet.
Dude, it's so good. It's so good, dude. Like they talk about like, you know, popping interpreter shells and all this stuff. But one of the things that they do in the book is to hack the pen testing company. They actually like the malicious group intercepted the carrier that was delivering hard drives to the pen testing company. And they actually like legit did like firmware backdooring like on like the hard drives prior to them actually getting into the pen testing company. So like the pen testing company gets this like shipment from Amazon and it's like a bunch of hard drives. They put them in their desktops and now they have backdoor. Yeah, it's awesome.
Now I totally understand why my friend gave me that book.
No, think your major exchange, and that's what vector somebody is trying to get into those exchanges, you know.
Yeah.
Send a bunch of hardware there for them.
Supply chain.
I'd be stupid enough. Well, I didn't order this.
But I could use one of these though.
Yeah, free USB drive.
Amazon messed up. I knew. I'm not telling.
Well, no. Even if you did order it, think how easy it'd be to get like somebody in the like shipping like center,
in the supply chain.
Yeah, in the supply chain that can see that stuff. You know, like as a mole.
Yeah, don't get any ideas. I hope none of our listeners are getting any ideas. Right. We are not involved with this. This is just hypothetical.
We just have bad guy minds. Sorry about that.
As pen testers, yeah, we all have bad guy minds.
We're trying to help you out as a customer or as a person or as a group to be more secure in the end. Just toss these ideas around in your brain a little bit. People can hack shit. So let's move on. So the next story is another one from Steve, Tesla cryptojacking.
Oh yeah, that was interesting. I think it kind of, I don't know if it blew up more than what it was, but it's a AWS environment that got breached and malware put on it for mining. So I don't know if it was. I don't think it was targeted. I just think they were just victim to a spray and pray.
Right.
And to start with like Kubernetes.
Yeah. It was Kubernetes.
Yeah, a bunch of exposed Kubernetes instances and led to AWS keys or something.
Fun.
Yeah, it's a web interface for Kubernetes, and it's made AWS.
I wonder how many Bitcoins they actually mined.
What?
I mean, you could have probably reported it to Tesla and got paid a little bit of a higher payout.
Well, this was kind of a little bit different than what we see in the past. I think most of we talk about malware mining every episode, and this one's just a little different in the fact that it's using their own mining pool, so they're not connecting to known stuff that could be blacklisted. So I mean, they went a little bit out of the way to hide themselves. Apparently, they were using CDNs as well. I don't know what that really has to do with. Well, this says they were using Cloudflare, so maybe, but I don't see how you would domain front your mining traffic. Maybe you could. That'd be interesting.
That actually sounds like an awesome research project.
Yeah.
Can I domain front my mining?
No, seriously. Think about that.
I mean, especially
how that would change
on Amazon.
Think how that would change CoinHive. I mean, God, this is such a terrible podcast right now.
Oh my God.
So down the negative bad guy route. All right, guys, more good guy talk. Oh man.
So yeah.
I mean, this just goes to show you that it's not just like your corporate environment that may be susceptible to malware stuff or mining or your DMZ, but your other endpoints in the cloud, because the cloud is not secure.
Well, but this is ridiculous. So this is pretty ridiculous. They had Kubernetes open right, with a web interface, no password login. Like all of this is like systemic failures of just configuration.
Yeah, it's like Tesla. Where? Oh God, where do we begin?
When you install Kubernetes, it's not like the web interface is set up automatically with no password. Like you have to turn all of that stuff.
I mean, come on. How many? Yeah. How many tests have you been? How many tests have you been on? You've just seen default development shit, out there on the border.
Because if they have to go the right way and go through their whole chain of command in order to get things provisioned, that means they have to get people involved in the politics, and it takes development, 3 sprints in order to roll out any new feature, and they're pushed under the gun. They're going to roll it up, and it just works. Let's not even worry about it.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, even worse, they'll probably root API keys for AWS.
Classic EC2.
Yeah.
What do you mean my EDB volume was mounted in a different region?
Yeah, exactly. What IAM? What the hell is that?
All right. Our next story is about vulnerable wallets. So apparently Bitcoin.com's wallet and the Jaxx wallet, Jaxx wallet, have a couple interesting worrisome vulnerabilities. So the Cheetah Mobile Blockchain Research Lab apparently did some research and found that there was a big problem with the Bitcoin.com wallet, specifically that the mnemonic phrases or the recovery seeds that are used by the Bitcoin wallet are stored in plain text in the local M wallet file. So apparently, they're just stored clear text on the disk. Apparently, like the seed. That just seems like a really bad idea.
Well, because they're sensitive and they recover access to the wallet. It's no different than keeping your passwords in plain text in a shared pref file in a mobile app. So yeah, it's totally a horrible idea. It kind of defeats the whole purpose of having a secure wallet to begin with. But I mean, obviously, it requires access to the underlying file system. But
right.
With the number of vulnerabilities that come out regularly, or Linux vulnerabilities that get ported to Android, yeah, I mean, there's lots of problems with this.
Yeah, I mean, so as an attacker, all I'd have to do is like get access to your system and find like the clear text like seed restore file, and that's game over, right? Like I don't need to know anything about your passphrase or anything. It's just get your seed and it's done.
Well, because the mnemonic seeds are supposed to be these passphrases that are put in a specific order to kind of recover access to a wallet, and that's the only way you can kind of recover from not having a backup of the wallet file. So having that is just as good as having access to the wallet. So yeah, it should be stored in some sort of cryptographically secure way, solid, protocols and solid algorithms, or however you're planning on doing it. But at the end of the day, they look at it probably like, well, you have to have physical access to the device, which is not necessarily entirely true. If I can find a vulnerability on the device and exploit that vulnerability in a remote way, I still have access to be able to recover that backup wallet or the wallet using the seeds that are plain text. So yeah, totally a problem. Totally, which is kind of a fundamental hard problem to solve with mobile to begin with, right? Because it's kind of the cat, and you have to keep that in a way that is secure, but it has to be added to the device and it has to be unique. So you can't just like take encryption keys and embed them in the app, because somebody's going to reverse engineer the app and get the encryption keys to all of the secured storage. Mm-hmm. So you have to literally provision the app to use some sort of user credentials to phone home to a server and then generate some sort of cryptographically sound encryption that can be used to store the data at rest on the device. And it has to be unique. And it has to be controllable, where if I kill the user account, then that can't be recovered anymore. This is a common problem in just mobile apps to begin with. So I could see how this is just plaguing these cryptocurrency wallets in the same exact fashion. It's the same problems, just reoccurring now with some sort of financial impact on users.
Mm-hmm. Definitely interesting. So, guys, do you have anything else you want to chat about before we jump into the last thing I kind of want to talk about? I mean, I'm trying to skip a couple stories just because we're kind of getting kind of low on time. I think we've gone over an hour already, or at least we're close.
No, I'm good.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, there's one thing I kind of wanted to talk about as like a kind of a last thing, and that's just cracking Bitcoin wallets. Because we kind of touched on, looking at the possibility of doing collisions earlier, which is definitely interesting. But I think even more interesting is the possibility of just cracking the password for a wallet. Like, we've seen a number of people go on Reddit and they're like, oh man, I had this wallet from 2013 that, had like 100 Bitcoin in it. And, I just can't remember my password. Can anyone help me crack it? I'll give you like 10% or whatever,
Or just give me 90% back.
Yeah, please, for the love of God, just give me some back.
Well, yeah, I mean, think about it. When they crack it, they could just be like, oh, well, that was fun. Thanks for the help. I'll keep these coins.
Yeah, but so through doing a bit of research recently into the Bitcoin wallet cracking spectrum, I've learned a few interesting things about wallets, and specifically cracking wallets, and actually how advanced some of the cracking softwares are. So in the pen testing world, we're familiar with a couple cracking softwares. We're very familiar with John the Ripper and Hashcat. Those two are probably, I would say, the two most popular password cracking softwares known in our realm, right? Would you guys agree?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, Hashcat, we use it all the time for cracking NTLM passwords, MD5s, anything you can imagine. Like, typically Hashcat's where it's at. And I love Hashcat just because it's very fast. It's very GPU friendly. So like we can use like all our 1070s, 1080s, whatever we want. But venturing into the world of cracking Bitcoin wallets, you have a couple of unique problems. You have, well, not necessarily problems, but unique, interesting situations that you can look at when it comes to cracking a wallet. So you can look at just cracking the password itself, right? Like you could say, like, I just want to try to get the passphrase or whatever somebody actually typed in as a password. The other thing is some wallets accept seeds, which those could be like 12 word seeds or 24 word seeds. So you can look at cracking those as well, which presents a very unique issue. Now, let's say you wanted to crack something that you knew partial bits of the password. This is where I think that this specific software, BTCRecover, kind of differs from a lot of the other cracking softwares. I think with Hashcat, you could probably do something similar to this with some of the rules, but it would take a little bit more work. But one of the things that I found to be really unique with BTCRecover is what they call positional anchoring. And so what positional anchoring is basically saying, I know that at spot, 1, 2, and 3 of this password, spot 1, let's say that I know that the beginning of it starts with the word Bitcoin. Spot 2 could be a 4-character letter. So I can make sure that middle section is completely mangled to 4 characters. Spot 3 is let's say like another dictionary word. So I could give it like a password list for spot 3. So you can now positionally anchor those and say, spot 1 always going to be Bitcoin for the entire thing. Spot 2 is going to be that 4-character brute force. Spot 3 is going to be a dictionary. And I think that's really kind of unique to the way BTCRecover is kind of looking at cracking passwords. And it even gets like better when you look at like let's say a 24-word character password. I mean, you can do the exact same thing. Like I know exactly where spot 1, spot 2, spot 3, all the way to the 24 is going to be. I might not know the exact word that's going to be there, but I can give it a list of words to attempt to brute force what I think might be there. So what do you guys think about?
Yeah, I did some work on that recently and was working with permutations and Hashcat has some utilities to combine words and also make kind of like word-based dictionaries, but it doesn't go up to 24. I think it stops at 15 or 16 words. So yeah, you can't do the positional anchoring, and that's BTC cover, like the recover, the same thing. I thought was really, really neat about it too. So it'd be cool to have something like that with Hashcat as well in the future, hopefully.
How was this the GPU support on BTCRecover?
Yeah, so they do support GPUs. Mm-hmm. It's a kind of like a what do they call it? Like a experimental. I think they call it experimental, right? Like it's not like 100% supported, right? It's kind of an experimental thing. But in my experience, it seems to be working pretty well. So the thing with Bitcoin wallets is the passwords are not cracked as quickly as most other algorithms, like an NTLM password. So just to give you like an example, I've tried to kind of tune up my 81070s that I have. And so with 8 GTX 1070, I'm cracking at about 11,000 permutations per second. So about a billion or so, a little bit more than a billion per day, just a little bit more. Whereas like with NTLM, like I can go through the crack station list in like 5 minutes, which is like 14 billion passwords in like 5 minutes. So like there's definitely a little bit of a lag there when it comes to try to crack, Bitcoin versus NTLM or MD5 for that matter. But it does provide you with at least some sort of mechanism for trying to recover something. So, I don't know. I guess if you're somebody who maybe like back in the day, you created a wallet and you lost your password, all hope's not lost. I promise you. Hey, you know what? You might be able to collide that hash one day, or
Yeah, okay.
or maybe you can just try something with BTCRecover. They're providing you with some really cool stuff. Like, let's say just like part of your password, and you want to kind of brute force the rest. Try out BTCRecover. You might find that it actually works out pretty well for you. So, guys, got anything else you want to add, or is that it?
That's good.
Yeah. All right. Well, everyone, thank you so much for listening. I am totally going to speak for all of us that we appreciate you. We love to have listeners, even if we're just kind of ranting about random cryptocurrency stuff. But yeah, we appreciate you. Thank you guys so much, and we will see you next week. I promise there's not going to be a week in between, as long as we don't get distracted with some like game or something.
Not that way.
Not that way. Yeah. We'll see you next week, guys. Thanks again. Goodbye.
Thanks.